Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of News for Normies, where I bring you the week's worth of news in a somewhat short time frame. Although I think this week might be a little longer than normal, but we'll see. So if you got some normies in your life, share this video with them, and let me know your comments down below, as I assume this one is going to be very interesting. So to start, we got some conspiracy theory type stuff. According to the CIA, I guess, new files have been released that apparently show Adolf Hitler was alive after the end of World War II in Colombia, and did not kill himself in the bunker in Germany. People have debated this for decades after the war. And a lot of people thought he went to Argentina, but now there's photos popping up that allegedly show him in Colombia. So, I didn't think we'd have Hitler files before the Epstein files, but here we are. Also, I wonder, just my own little dumb conspiracy theory, whether Adolf Hitler was responsible for the rise of cocaine in Colombia down there, because we all know he definitely liked his uppers. He was high on meth the whole time he was in Germany, so maybe he switched from that to Colombia because, it was readily available, and he also needed some cash. I don't know. I'm just spitballing things, and I'm not an expert, so I don't know if I'm allowed to comment on things like that. If you know, you know, and we'll get to that later on in the episode. So, the UK is allegedly starting to use AI technology to scan people's faces at certain stores in order to crack down on shoplifting. Instead of having some kind of security guard there or the police to arrest people for actual crimes and not just talking shit on the internet. But also, this is definitely creeping more and more towards a mark of the beast type thing mentioned in the book of Revelation. That's the last book of the Bible for you heathens. Is Revelation 13, 11 through 18, primarily verses 16 and 17, which mention that no one can buy or sell if they do not have the mark of the beast on their hand or forehead. I just gave you the exact verse. If you want to go look it up for yourself, you have the internet, you can do so and read the whole thing. I would not recommend starting with the King James because you'll get confused. Maybe an NIV or ESV, but there you go. Okay, so for some serious news, a helicopter crashed in New York City into the Hudson River, and according to a lot of the videos I saw on X, it looked as if the propeller on top of the helicopter just simply detached from it while it was in mid-flight, and it just plummeted right into the water. Sadly, everyone on board died, including 3 children. And interestingly enough, for me at least, one of the passengers on the helicopter was the CEO of a company called Siemens, Siemens. They are a CNC machine control company. They sell like the control panel that goes onto different CNC machines, and that's actually the kind of control I use at my machine at work. So I'm like, oh wow, the CEO, the dude whose product I use is gone. That's pretty sad. Anyway, I'm getting lost in the weeds here. It was a tragedy for a family, and obviously the pilot. I don't know how exactly true it is, but apparently the pilot was a former Navy SEAL who wanted to take up private aviation after he got out of the military. So that's pretty sad as well. And of course, an investigation is going on right now to see what exactly happened. But, leave it to the left to immediately blame Donald Trump for it, as if Donald Trump or snuck his way into New York City to that one specific helicopter and, hit the lug nuts with the ugga-dugga to loosen up the nuts and cause a crash. This is why the left is losing losing ground with the common person, because they're just going even more insane. This is, who knows? From the surface, it seems like a maintenance error that sadly cost the lives of several people. But we will see what happens, after the investigation is complete. So some interesting stuff going on. I'm sure people have heard about this by now, and I'm kind of sick of hearing about it, but I'm going to talk about it because it'll probably get clicks on this video. A company called Colossal Biosciences, which is a bioengineering company, claims to have brought back dire wolves from extinction. They claim to have extracted DNA from 2 dire wolf fossils, put together a, quote, partial dire wolf genome, end quote, and essentially used a female gray wolf as an egg donor to create the dire wolf pups. If this sounds really familiar, I think we have a whole movie series about this that started in the 90s. And at this time, it is unclear as to whether Colossal Biosciences is going to try this with a T-Rex at any point in the future. Yeah. Somebody let Chris Pratt know. Get that 4570 ready in case some things go down. It is interesting, though, that something like this happened. I was sick of hearing about it because it was all over Facebook for like 2 days straight. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. Are my taxes still getting stolen from me? Cool. I don't care. Okay. Moving on. Rumble and Rebel News are suing the Canadian government over issues regarding free speech. Their lawsuit alleges that the Canadian government has infringed on the freedom of speech for Canadians. And I mean, I think anybody with some common sense and at least one good eye in their skull can see that they've done this. But this is significant because many countries are cracking down on free speech, like many European countries arresting people for memes. Look at you, Germany, and even Canada cracking down on the trucker protest a while back. So I hope they win this suit and reverse some of this sanity up north, and deliver a proverbial punch to the nose to the Canadian government, because they absolutely deserve it. Not physically, not actual violence, just in a courtroom, in a lawsuit type setting. Don't want anybody taking that shit out of context. Okay. Now, back to our own government. DHS is now screening visa applicants for anti-Semitism on their social media accounts before, allowing them to come into the country. On one hand, I don't like the idea of the federal government, screening people for wrong speak or thought crimes. But on the other hand, this also kind of invalidates the leftist argument that Trump is a Nazi. Because if you open up any history book you were given from kindergarten to 12th grade, it's all about Hitler and the Nazis and, their hatred for the Jews. So I don't see how you could be a Nazi and also pro-Israel at the same time. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but, the left tends to not make a lot of sense anyway. Okay, so Joe Rogan, who's always seems to be in the news, had a very interesting episode this week in which he essentially moderated a debate between Dave Smith and Douglas Murray. This was episode number 2303 if you are interested in watching the whole thing. It is 3 hours long, and I will say it's a good episode, but also kind of rough to get through. If you don't know who either of these guys are, Dave Smith is a libertarian, political commentator, comedian. He's certainly not an expert on a lot of things, but is very knowledgeable about a lot of things. And Douglas Murray, I guess, is a British conservative political kind of commentator dude. I've heard his name before, never really heard anything he's talked about until now. But this episode was, it was interesting to see Douglas Murray's point of view. But, I don't know, he came off just like a pompous, self-aggrandized cunt. And his accent definitely didn't help. Like I said, he's British, so it just makes him sound like he's all, hoity-toity and stuff. So here's the short version of the episode. For about the first 40 minutes, Douglas Murray essentially talks shit right to Joe Rogan's face about having non-experts talk about heavy topics such as, the Israel-Gaza conflict, war in Ukraine, COVID, etc. And this was mostly about Daryl Cooper, who was a guest on Joe Rogan's show, but was also did an interview with Tucker Carlson. in which he made a comment about Winston Churchill, in Daryl's opinion, secretly being the villain behind World War II. Now, this one comment got blown way out of proportion on the internet, and people forgot the fact that he, likes to say this to his buddy Jocko Willink, who is a very diehard Anglo-Saxon dude, and it, kind of pushes his friend's buttons. So, so that was about the first 40 minutes of it, and then Douglas Murray criticized Cooper many times, yet claimed that he never listened to Cooper's content and said, "I don't need to," based off of the one comment that Cooper made. For the rest of it, Douglas Murray just kind of talked in circles, never gave a straight answer, and refused to really acknowledge when Dave Smith had a good point, especially about Middle East policies over the last 30 years. So the ultimate takeaway for me was that Douglas Murray came off very pompous, and seems like he's okay with censoring anyone who isn't an expert on their given talking point. This is very dangerous, as I just mentioned. You got countries in Europe arresting people for memes. And, let's not forget that sometimes non-experts have the most brilliant ideas. We all know about Flamin' Hot Cheetos. The guy that created the Flamin' Hot Cheetos recipe was a janitor for the company. He wasn't an expert on, flavor making or whatever the fuck. So, he brought the idea to him. They liked it. They bought the idea from him. He got pretty wealthy from my understanding, and now the company sells those like hotcakes. So, had he left it to the experts to come up with Flamin' Hot Cheetos, we may never have them. Now, I know that, a potato chip snack or whatever you want to call it is completely different than international policy, but the same idea still stands. Sometimes someone who's not an expert on the given thing has an idea that nobody thought about before, and it just works. So, if you're one of these people that still claims we need to listen to the experts, get out of here. I can't take you seriously anymore. Because, as Dave Smith has pointed out, the experts have gotten things wrong plenty of times, and now we wonder why people don't trust our institutions. Okay, moving on. The U.S. House of Representatives passed the SAVE Act, which is an acronym that I don't remember what it stands for, but it is heading to the Senate for a vote. The gist of the bill would require proof of citizenship for people who go register to vote, and like clockwork, the left claims that this will disenfranchise minorities to vote, and it will make it harder for married women to vote, and all this yada, yada, yada. It's insane to me that the left thinks that women and minorities are so stupid and or lazy that they can't obtain an ID. And honestly, in my opinion, if you're unwilling to do that, you shouldn't be voting regardless of which one of the two genders you are or what your skin color is. I always like to break this down to just your home, okay, or your apartment, wherever you live. If somebody does not live with you and contribute to your bills, they don't get a say on what you buy at the grocery store, what TV shows you watch, what color you paint the walls in your house, things like that. So people who are not citizens of this country should not be making decisions on who gets elected to office to then represent us in government going forward. I don't understand why this is a hard thing for people to grasp, but it just makes common sense, or uncommon sense we should call it, because it seems like a lot of people don't have common sense anymore. Yeah. And if you think, oh, nobody's illegal, wrong. We have laws about trespassing. I can't just go walk into the person who lives next door to me. Can't just walk in their front door and sit on their couch. That's illegal. You can't walk into a restaurant and cause a scene, and then when they tell you to leave, you can't be like, no, I ain't leaving, because now you're technically trespassing. That's illegal. So if you come into the country without going through the proper processes first, that's illegal. And if you try to vote, that's also not okay. Don't understand why that's hard to understand. Anyway, Whoops. My bad. I thought I had a setting set wrong, and I about had to scrap this whole video and start over. Okay. So, this is terrifying. A new poll shows that 55% of the left-leaning people in this country think assassination of Donald Trump is okay right now. This is terrifying for our political climate, as we had that instance with Luigi Mangione a while back, and 2 assassination attempts on the president's life during the campaign. And I actually have a link to this down below, which then leads me into my next story here. Ryan Routh, the second would-be Trump assassin, apparently tried to obtain a rocket launcher to use in his attack on Donald Trump at his golf course. Apparently he had contacts in Ukraine and even told his contact that, one rocket launcher won't be missed in the, the midst of war, so how about you just send it to me over here and it'll all be okay. Like, it's not his exact words, but that's pretty much what he said. Yeah, again, terrifying. And it's also terrifying that the dude had, a bubbled up SKS and possibly could have gotten a shot off at Trump. And finally, on this same vein, police arrested a guy who goes by Mr. Satan for threatening to assassinate Trump and kill ICE agents, and even apparently called for others to do so. I love to see these wackos get wrapped up, but I wonder if this guy is a huge fan of Dragon Ball Z. If you're an anime fan, you'll understand that reference. Also, if we're going to do this, shouldn't the likes of Kathy Griffith and Snoop Dogg be arrested because they've made comments like that before and even held up a fake bloodied head of Donald Trump after it was cut off of a fake body of Donald Trump? Just saying. Okay. Moving on from that. National Guard personnel are apparently going to be active in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because crime has gotten so out of control there. Congratulations, Democrats. You wanted less police, but now you have a heightened police state. You literally shot yourselves in the foot with this one. With the whole summer of love in 2020, with the whole defund the police, you rioted and burned things down, and then you wondered why things went wrong. Like stores leaving and people moving out of those communities and stuff like that, and then it went to shit. I don't know, maybe if you burn things down and basically force a police state, people don't like that and want to move. Just saying. Speaking of those protests, more than 1,300 protests took place on April 5th across all 50 states, and these protests seem to be organized by groups like Indivisible and Open Society Foundations, who is largely funded by the one and only George Soros, who hates your guts. I remember seeing stuff on the internet last week when people were at these protests and like, oh, people are going to say these are paid organizers and these are, this isn't organic, but it's true. We hate Trump. It's like, you've got 1,300 protests across the country on one day, and you want me to believe it's just people that are pissed off at the government. I don't think so. It just seems too much of a logical leap to think that it's all organic. Yeah, it's just, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. But however, it seems that a lot of people aren't buying this shit and are rejecting these protests, as people in New York City started throwing garbage out of their apartment windows onto the protesters in the streets, because they're tired of hearing the horns and the whistles and the chanting, and are probably tired of it taking, 45 minutes to walk down the block to go get a bagel, or whatever they do in New York City. I don't really care. So while I find this part amusing, for legal reasons, don't do this. It is obviously illegal, considered assault. You can be charged with a crime yourself for doing this. But again, I find it amusing. Alright, so we got a lot to talk about the Supreme Court. Good and bad here, so bear with me. The Supreme Court sided with the Trump administration on firing probationary federal employees, as Trump has wanted to downsize the federal government employee workforce. So now the administration essentially has the green light to cut probationary employees as they see fit. If this bothers you, learn to code or learn to grow, because we're going to need farmers. The Supreme Court also lifted a block on the Trump administration, preventing them from deporting oingy bongy, from deporting illegal aliens under the Alien Enemies Act. So good on the Supreme Court for upholding this one. And I find it interesting that it came down to a 5-4 vote with Justice Amy Coney Barrett siding against it. So don't forget that Trump appointed her in his first term, and it seems at this point that she is kind of turning her back on him. Also, anyone who's upset with this Alien Enemies Act because of the age of the bill should also look back to the Constitution, as it is even older than that. And, I think it's pretty obvious what it means when it says, shall not be infringed. Yeah. So, in a weird twist, however, the Supreme Court voted 9-0 that Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia must be brought back from El Salvador. He was recently deported under the allegations of criminal gang affiliation, but for whatever reason, the government has now voted that he must be brought back. Like I talked about last week, he was originally slated to be deported in 2019, and then a court order put a stay on that, so then he was just kind of hanging out here, not really knowing what to do, and then the government was like, psych, you're going, and then now they're like, no, you gotta be brought back. So it's weird. It almost seems like the Supreme Court doesn't know what the fuck they're doing at this point, and hopefully we can get some more just consensus on this kind of stuff. Alrighty. I am coming to an end here, so bear with me. I got 2 more stories. A whistleblower from Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, apparently has come forward claiming that executives within the company lied about their dealings with China, essentially selling out Americans to the Chinese Communist Party. So this just shows that Mark Zuckerberg was and still is full of shit and shouldn't be trusted. Just for an anecdotal example, I got a warning on my personal Facebook page for a meme when Hurricane Helene went through North Carolina, which was after Zuck went on Rogan and said, we're not censoring people anymore. So this is absolute bullshit, Mark. You know it, your people know it, and it's disgusting. I wonder if some kind of international charge could be brought up on that or something. I don't know. But it seems like most of our Congress is sold out to China anyway. And speaking of China, this is the big news story that people have been talking about all week. I've had a very difficult time trying to keep things straight, so I believe I have the information as accurate as I can possibly get it. If I am wrong, please correct me in the comments below. I don't want to be like CNN and spreading false information. Tariffs. We've all been hearing about them all week. Trump, at this point, has paused all major tariffs across the globe, except for China. Every country will have a 10% tariff, which is much lower for a lot of those countries now. But China will enjoy a nice, fat 145% tariff on goods coming in. There is a link below to this one. It is, let me see here. It is a Fox News article. It is the first Fox News article I linked here. If you click on it, you'll have to just scroll to the very end of the article to get the actual pertinent information. That's why I fucking hate Fox News, but it was just there. So, because of Trump's actions on tariffs this week, the stock market has been very wonky. It looks like a roller coaster at Cedar Point or something. So, if you bought the dip earlier this week, you're probably seeing a bit of an increase right now. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just talking about what I've seen over the past week. More importantly, China reached out to Australia in an attempt to circumvent the American tariffs, but Australia rejected the Chinese. So, good for Australia. I have a little bit more respect for you right now, but you're not allowed to own guns, so I don't know how you're supposed to fight kangaroos. But if you're a Democrat freaking out about the Trump tariffs, which everybody has been this week, I want you to watch the last video that I linked below. It is of your beloved Nancy Pelosi in 1996 talking about how China was ripping us off back then, and then calling on the president at the time, Bill Clinton, to be harder on China to bring back jobs to the U.S. So this has been a problem for decades now. Every single president and every single Congress has been kicking this can down the road since Nixon, and he is the biggest one to blame for this, and a lot of the shit we're dealing with right now. And it's about time that a president had the balls to actually do something about this. Also, interestingly enough, it's the left that always wants the government to, kind of stick it to the big guys. Who do you think got hit the most with all the dips in the stock market this past week? Like, I still had to go to work every day and bought gas and groceries. People like me still had to go to the grocery every day, and we still got bills to pay. So, like, the biggest people that got hit by these tariffs and the stock market, going up and down and stuff, was like the hedge fund managers and, the ultra billionaires who own like 40% of the world's or the US stocks or whatever. So you should be thanking Trump for this one if you're on the left, because it's actually doing the thing you wanted to do. But you can never get over your Trump derangement syndrome to it. Just accept the fact that he did something good. So that is all I've got this week. I got to go tear down a fence today. So I will keep my ears open for the news and might talk about the fence next week. So with that being said, take care, and I will see you all then.